My name is Anna. I was 22 years old when my parents told me the news that changed my life. We were sitting in the living room on a warm evening. The fan turned slowly above our heads, and my mother brought tea in small cups. My father cleared his throat, looked at me, and said, "Anna, we have found a good man for you. His name is David. He comes from a respected family, and he has a good job. We think you should marry him." I remember staring at my cup of tea. The sweet smell of cardamom rose up, but I could not taste it. My heart began to beat fast. "Marry him?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. "But I don't even know him." My mother touched my hand gently. "You have met him, remember? He came to our house last month with his uncle. He spoke politely. He is a good man, Anna. He will take care of you." "Yes," my father added firmly. "Love is not everything. A marriage needs respect, responsibility, and security. David can give you all of that." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say, "But I want to marry for love. I want to laugh with someone, dream with someone, not just live like two strangers." But when I looked at my father's serious face and my mother's hopeful eyes, the words died in my throat. For many nights after that, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about David. He was 28 years old, tall, with short dark hair and a serious face. I had met him only 2 times. He spoke kindly, but not warmly. His words were short, his smile small, his eyes calm like still water. There was nothing wrong with him, but there was also nothing that made my heart dance. Still, within 3 months, our wedding was arranged. The day of the wedding was bright and busy. The house was full of relatives, laughter and music. My friends helped me into my white dress, fixing the lace on the sleeves and the veil on my head. They told me how beautiful I looked. But when I saw my reflection in the mirror, I felt like I was looking at someone else. When I entered the wedding hall, flowers lined the path. People clapped and smiled. Cameras flashed, and music played. But in my chest, there was only heaviness. My hands trembled as I walked slowly toward David, who stood waiting in a black suit. He looked handsome, but serious as always. When our eyes met, he gave me a polite nod. I tried to smile, but it felt weak. The priest spoke, asking us to take our vows. When it was my turn, my voice shook. "Yes," I said, when asked if I would take David as my husband. But inside, my heart whispered, "No, I am not ready." When the ceremony ended, the hall filled with applause. Relatives hugged me and wished me a happy life. Everyone smiled, except me. I felt as if I had signed a contract I did not understand. After the wedding, David and I moved to a small house on the edge of the city. It was a nice house, with 2 bedrooms, a little garden, and white curtains on the windows. From the outside, it looked perfect, but inside it felt cold. On our first evening, I stood in the kitchen, making tea. The silence in the house was heavy. David sat in the living room, reading some papers from his office. He did not come to the kitchen to ask if I needed help. I wanted him to ask. I wanted him to say something, anything, but he stayed quiet. We drank tea together, sitting across the table. "Do you like the house?" he asked. "Yes, it is nice," I replied softly. Then silence again. Only the sound of the clock ticking on the wall filled the room. This became our routine. In the morning, he left for work. I stayed home, cleaning, cooking, arranging the house. In the evening, he returned, tired, carrying his office bag. We ate dinner, spoke a few sentences about food or weather, and then went to bed. He was polite, never unkind, but he was also distant, like a wall I could not climb. At night, I lay beside him, my face turned away, tears slipping silently onto the pillow. Weeks turned into months. My friends visited sometimes, But when they left, the house felt even emptier. My parents called, asking if I was happy. I said, yes, everything is fine. I lied, because I did not want them to worry. But inside, I felt like a bird in a cage. My wings wanted to fly, but the bars of duty and silence kept me trapped. One afternoon, I sat in the garden watching the flowers. The sky was blue, and children were laughing in the street. I closed my eyes and imagined another life. A life where I had married someone I loved. In that dream, my husband and I laughed together, shared secrets, walked hand in hand. The dream was sweet, but when I opened my eyes, the silence of the house returned, and my heart felt heavy again. One evening, after nearly 3 months of marriage, David noticed something. I had cried in the afternoon, and my eyes were still, red. At dinner, he looked at me carefully. "Anna," he asked, his voice calm but curious, "have you been crying?" My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. I felt caught, exposed. For a moment, I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to say, yes, I cry because I am lonely. I cry because I feel like I live with a stranger. I cry because I want love. But fear stopped me. What if he thought I was ungrateful? What if he became angry? So I forced a small smile and whispered, "No, I am fine." He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. Then he nodded slowly and said nothing more. But for the first time, I felt he had truly seen me. It was December, when everything changed. The air was cold, and I wore a thick sweater while waiting for David to return from work. He came home late that night, his face pale, his shoulders heavy. "Are you okay?" I asked carefully. He tried to smile. "I'm fine, just tired." But before he could take another step, his body shook, and he fainted right there on the floor. I screamed his name and ran to his side. His skin was cold, his breathing shallow. My hands trembled as I lifted his head and called the doctor. When the doctor came, he checked David carefully. "He is overworked," the doctor said firmly. "He eats too little, sleeps too little, and works too much. He needs rest and care, or his health will become worse." As the doctor left, I sat beside David, who was now asleep on the bed. His face looked softer, almost boyish. He was no longer the serious man with a strong suit and silent eyes. He was weak, human, and fragile. I touched his hand. It was warm in mine. For the first time, I felt something stir inside me, a small seed of care, of tenderness. I realized he was not a stranger made of stone. He was a man who could fall, who could need someone. That night, I did not sleep. I sat by his side, watching him breathe, holding his hand, whispering prayers. My heart whispered something else too, something I had not felt before. Maybe love can grow. The morning after David fainted, I woke up early. He was still sleeping, his face calm but tired. I looked at him for a long time. For the first time, I did not see him as a stranger in my house. I saw him as a man who needed care. I went to the kitchen, boiled milk, and made porridge with honey. When he woke up, I placed the tray on the table beside him. "Eat," I said softly. "The doctor said you need food and rest." He sat up slowly, surprised. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," I replied. He looked at me, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. Then he gave a small nod and began to eat. That morning was simple, but it was the beginning of change. In the days that followed, I began to take care of him in little ways. I prepared healthy meals, reminded him to take breaks, and walked with him in the garden in the evenings. At first, he seemed surprised by my attention. He had always thought of me as quiet, distant, but now he saw another side of me. One evening, I placed a bowl of vegetable soup in front of him. He tasted it, and his face softened. "This is delicious. Anna," he said. "You cooked it very well." It was the first true compliment he had given me. My heart jumped with joy. "Thank you," I whispered, smiling shyly. From that day, I began to notice little changes in him too. He started coming home earlier from work. He asked me questions. "What book are you reading? What music do you like? Do you miss your family?" His voice was still calm, but now it carried warmth. I answered carefully at first, but soon words began to flow. I told him about my childhood, about how I liked to paint, about how I dreamed of traveling one day. He listened quietly, sometimes nodding, sometimes smiling. We started taking walks after dinner. At first, we walked in silence, side by side. The street lamps glowed softly, and the night air was cool. I could hear the sound of our footsteps and the distant barking of dogs. One evening, he suddenly spoke. "When I was a boy, I wanted to be an engineer, but life was hard. I had to start working early to support my family." I looked at him with surprise. He had never shared anything personal before. "That must have been difficult," I said gently. He nodded. "Yes, but I learned to be strong. Sometimes. Maybe too strong." His words touched me. I realized he was not silent because he did not care. He was silent because he carried heavy responsibilities. On another evening, I told him about my own fears. "I never thought I would marry someone I didn't love," I admitted. "I was afraid I would never feel happiness again." He stopped walking and turned to me. "I know," he said quietly. "I felt the same. I knew you did not want this marriage. I saw it in your eyes. I thought, maybe you hated me." My eyes filled with tears. "I didn't hate you. I just felt trapped, like a bird in a cage. But now, I see you differently." That night, for the first time, he held my hand. His touch was gentle, not distant. My heart beat fast, and I held his hand tightly, afraid to let go. The weeks passed, and our house began to change. Once it was silent, now it was full of small sounds of life. I played music while cooking. David sometimes came to the kitchen and asked, "Do you need help?" He cut vegetables clumsily, and we laughed together when the pieces looked strange. Sometimes he brought flowers on his way home from work. "These are for my wife," he would say with a shy smile. I placed them in a vase, my heart full of warmth. At the dinner table, he told small jokes, and I laughed until my eyes shone. I had not laughed like that in months. It felt as if a frozen river inside me had begun to flow again. One rainy evening, we sat near the window, watching the drops run down the glass. The air smelled of wet earth. David spoke softly. "Anna, I want to tell you something. The truth is, I was afraid in the beginning. I didn't know how to talk to you. I thought maybe you didn't want me, so I stayed quiet. But inside, I wanted to love you." Tears filled my eyes. I touched his hand. "And I wanted love too, but I thought you didn't care." We were both afraid. He looked at me with deep eyes. "Then let's not be afraid anymore." That night, for the first time, he kissed me with love. My heart, once heavy with sadness, felt light and full. Months turned into a year. Our bond grew stronger. With every passing day, we became true partners. On weekends, we visited the market together. He carried the heavy bags, and I teased him for buying too many apples. He laughed and teased me back for buying too many flowers. We decorated the house together. I painted the living room a soft cream color, and he built shelves for my books. The house, once cold and empty, became warm and alive. We shared our dreams. "I want to travel to the mountains one day," I told him. "Then we will," he replied with a smile. "We will see the world together." I began to paint again, filling the walls with colors. He framed my paintings and told visitors proudly, "My wife made these." His words filled me with joy and pride. 2 years after our marriage, our daughter was born. When I held her in my arms for the first time, my eyes filled with tears, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I felt a love deeper than anything I had ever known. David stood beside me, his eyes shining. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "Thank you, Anna. Thank you for giving me this gift." In that moment, I realized how far we had come. From strangers in a cold house, we had become a family full of love. At night when the baby cried, David woke up with me, rocking her gently until she slept again. He was no longer the distant man I had once married. He was my partner, my friend, my love. One quiet evening, as I sat in the garden holding my baby, David came and sat beside me. The moonlight touched his face, and he looked peaceful. "Anna," he said softly, "do you remember our wedding day?" I nodded. "Yes." "I remember how empty I felt." He smiled sadly. "I remember too. I thought you would never love me." I leaned against him and whispered, "I didn't love you then, but love grew, slowly, like a seed becoming a tree, and now, I cannot imagine life without you." He wrapped his arm around me, "And I will spend my life making sure you never feel unloved again." The house that once felt like a cage was now a home full of warmth, laughter, and dreams. I learned something important. Sometimes love does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, step by step, like dawn after a long night. But when it comes, it changes everything. I had married without love, but I found it, slowly and beautifully, with the man who became not just my husband, but my true companion for life.